Hi folks, and welcome back to another edition of Botha Chats. And today I'm with someone very, very special to me, Tempest Crane, who is probably the trans woman most responsible for helping me out of the closet. Oh, shall we say, just come out of trans.
You're the trans woman that's most responsible for helping you out.
And we're going to talk about...
All I did was hold a road sign and say that way.
Yeah, but I realized that, but the thing is, the reason I credit you so much is because I had a really bad experience the first time I tried to come out in the early noughties. And when we crossed paths, it was around about 2007, 2008, you were the first sort of trans woman I'd ever met who didn't talk about trans being a stigma, but being liberation, which, funny enough, has become more and more sort of, more the mainstream thinking, among with the trans community now. But you were like the first, and you were also the first to talk about non-binary, and I just thought it was so refreshing.
I don't know if we had non-binary back then. we didn't call it that.
No, it's always been around since I've had an association with. Sorry.
Well, I guess maybe it just wasn't on my radar. I mean, for me, it's like, I don't care who you are, what you are. I don't care if you're a potted plant. It's just like, if you're a cool potted plant, you're a cool potted plant. It's good with me.
Yeah. I remember I didn't tell you first off. I knew I was trans, obviously, because I'd already tried to come out, a few years before. But the trouble was that I'd had the misfortune of meeting a rather hideously true scum bigot, who basically went around pissing on everyone else for not being trans enough, and I was never going to live up.
Still out there, so
yeah. I mean, we have Blair White on YouTube to contend with, but as I said, you were the first two who sort of said, "Oh, it's liberation," fuck your gender and all that, which was so refreshing. And I plucked up the courage to tell you on the third call that I was trans. And then for 2.5 years, you just basically, you didn't nag me, horribly. You just sort of nagged me gently that, it would do me some good to, to basically be honest with myself.
Well, yeah, basically, I think my take was like, well, if this is what you want to do, why ain't you doing it?
Yeah.
It's just that simple. If this is what you really want to do and you're miserable not doing it, I mean, it not just even with trans individuals. People run away from who they are and what they want to do with their life. I see people do it their entire lives. My own mother is doing it. It frustrates me with her because she has worked her entire life. She's made some good investments. She's not like incredibly wealthy. We have a tiny farm in North Dakota that's, probably not worth the dirt that it's actually standing on. But I mean, she's saved up and she doesn't spend money for anything. And she's got a respectable amount. And, she's 72 years old. And she's like, well, I think I'm going to get myself another job. And I'm like, why? Did you lose a bet with somebody? What are you doing? She goes, well, I'm bored. I don't know what to do. I said, travel, go somewhere, do something. Isn't there any place you ever wanted to go? I said, well, but I've never been able to go those places. What's stopping you now? I mean, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting to be 90 and in a wheelchair and somebody take you there? Do it.
Yeah. I mean, you weren't the person to put 2 boxes of hormones in my hand and tell me to get on with it. That was a trans friend at the time, Susie, who unfortunately we're no longer friends because she's an attention seeker and enabled someone to cyberstalk me. I found out later. It's kind of complicated because we had an intimate relationship, and basically when she did put 2 boxes of hormones in my hand and I got on with it, I think she was jealous because, well, I'm younger than her, so I was going to look better than her just on that basis. But I think she was jealous that I was far more feminine in the way I looked. Seriously, that there was that. As well as I did, there is that bitchiness in the trans community, and it can get quite. it can get quite nasty. But the thing I remember was that I didn't speak to you for a while after I came out, and I remember I think it was about 3-4 months after I came out, I finally got hold of you. And I remember you just sort of, I remember hearing this huge sigh of relief at the end of the other end of the phone. And you said, well, you're going to be happier now, aren't you?
Well, I kind of have a way of cutting to the chase sometimes.
Yeah. Do you want to, so I should have told people a bit about you, because you've had a very interesting life. I mean, you're a musician. Well, you weren't a Hell's Angels, but you had an association with them, didn't you?
Not the actual Hell's Angels. I was a hangers-on, is what you call it, with another club. And that club was later, I mean, probably 10 years after I was anywhere near it, was patched over by the Angels. So no, I didn't have anything directly in association with them.
Yeah, because I remember when we sort of started to get to know each other, Sons of Anarchy started on TV. We were both fans of that, weren't we? I remember.
Yeah, I mean, it was a well-done show, and it was pretty true to form. I mean, I'm not going to say exactly, and I didn't delve that deep. I'll put it that way. And I don't want to go too in depth on this subject because there's just places I shouldn't walk. You know what I mean? Sure. Because that's not my turf. That's not where I belong anymore. So I moved on and I moved away from that. I still ride motorcycle. I still am part of the motorcycle, biker culture, but not necessarily that segment.
No, but the thing I remember about Sons of Anarchy is I never expected a trans character to turn up in it. And then when it was about the 4th or 5th season, suddenly Walt Goggins turns up as Venus, was it Venus Van Dam? Wasn't it the character?
Oh, I can't remember the name of the character. I know the one that you're asking about, because I actually, if I had been living in LA, I had an invite to audition for that part.
Yeah, we should also mention you were up for a part in Planet Terror, weren't you? The Robert Rodriguez Grindhouse.
No, that wasn't me.
Oh, wasn't it?
I would have jumped at it, but that wasn't presented to me.
Oh, I thought you said you were, but anyways, I mean, you have, but there was a film you were in, wasn't it?
That was Open, filmed by Jake Usna. It's part of the Provincetown, Rhode Island Film Festival this year, celebrating its 10-year anniversary. It won a Berlin Film Festival Fan Choice Award, despite my poor acting skills in it.
Right.
One of the things with it seems like if you're a trans woman, self-deprecation is a superpower. we can all do it at the snap of our fingers. We can put ourselves down. So,
but your main passion is music. I mean, you've had your, how long is it? Harsh Reality's been around now, your band?
Since 1989.
Yeah.
So a long time. Yeah, and I was what, 2.5 years old, something like that, when I started the band. No, I'm kidding. That's just me making fun of my age. Hence the self-deprecation superpower there.
Yeah, and of course you play metal. You're a big Motorhead.
Some people call it. It's just rock and roll to me. That's why it's loud and it's fast, but I mean it's still just rock and roll.
Yeah, you're taking the Lemmy line.
Well, Lemmy, I'm sitting behind a giant backdrop banner of Motorhead's War Pig. But Lemmy was a huge, and is a huge, influence on me, even as a trans woman, because Lemmy was all about being true to yourself.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter that he was, a male or anything like that. Being true to yourself is being true to yourself and being honest with people about who you are and yourself as well.
Yeah.
And so I seek inspiration from Lemmy as much as I seek inspiration from women like Wendy O. Williams or Joan Jett or anything like that.
Oh yeah, of course you like Lita Ford, and of course Lita Ford and Joan Jett started off in the Runaways.
Well, to say I like Lita Ford's music. I remember way back in social media's evolved, and 10 10 years ago or so, maybe a little bit more than that, everybody and their favorite pet was on MySpace. And I kind of tried to make some contact with Lita Ford and things like that. And she said she came off as being very, and not necessarily very, but somewhat negative towards anybody in the queer lifestyle whatsoever. And I just went, okay, bye. I don't need that.
Yeah,
that's my secret for dealing with people that don't like me. There's plenty of people out in the world that don't like me. Guess what? I don't hang out with them.
Yeah,
simple. Problem solved.
Well, no, I mean, obviously, I come from sort of the punk rock tradition, so obviously I know about the Runaways and I know about Joan Jett. Not so much.
I was a security guard for Joan Jett back in 1989.
Well, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, she's cool.
I mean, I wasn't like her personal bodyguard or anything. I was just, a security guard for the stage on her Midwest leg of the tour. That was it. But I mean, yeah, that was still my role.
And of course, she's queer herself. So, I think she's bisexual.
Yeah. Pretty much. I mean, she has a preference for girls. So do I. That threw me for a loop when I transitioned. I was like, well, should I like men now? I mean, I'm kind of attracted to men. The problem is most of them are kind of dumb, and I can't deal with that level of I don't know. It's just there's a lot of them that don't present themselves in an intellectually mature manner. Put it that way.
Yeah. I was going to say that I don't know if I've ever told you the story about Lemmy and he was being interviewed in a magazine called Q, and there was this question about, is it true you had sex with a transsexual? And he went yeah. He said if they had the guts to have their balls cut off, I had the balls to fuck them.
Yeah. I only met Lemmy one time. And Motorhead was by far my rock and roll inspiration and personal inspiration. To a large degree, Lemmy was my father when I didn't have a father. He taught me the rules of living honorably and being true to yourself. And I got to meet him probably about 3-4 years before he passed away. And it was in a fan meet and greet. And I was starstruck. I mean, my jaw was on the ground. And I was standing there, and I had brought one of the No Remorse leather sleeve album covers to see if he would sign it and things like that. And the promotion company's like, no, you can only get signed this album because that's what we're promoting. And Lemmy kind of growled at them and it got me taken care of anyway. But I was, excuse me, so starstruck, I couldn't speak. And Lemmy got up from where he was sitting, came around the table, and held my hand. And I'm sitting there going, wow. I was just overblown, complete gentleman. And it's forever an experience I'll treasure.
Yeah, I have a friend who lives in Camden, and they knew Lemmy when he used to hang out at Dingwalls, which is a club in Camden. And they said he was the nicest of nicest guys. He really was. And he always had time for the fans because he knew that they were the people who put him where he was. And I cried the day I heard he died.
I definitely did.
Yeah, I mean, I should explain. Motorhead had crossover appeal. There's always the Henry Rollins does a stand-up routine about how when he discovered Motorhead, and it was like, well, they sound a bit punk, but they look like hippies. Of course, Henry Rollins, famously, the lead singer in Black Flag, probably one of the most famous hardcore bands there's ever been. And he's been dining out on that fact ever since. I mean, I've always said about Henry Rollins, he can't sing, he can't act, but he's had a wonderful career.
He can act within a range. It's not necessarily a broad range, but he can act within a range. It's similar to Will Smith films in the 90s. If you saw a Will Smith film in the 90s, it was Will Smith starring as Will Smith.
Yeah.
He was basically playing himself,
Well,
which is
I always say that about Tommy Lee Jones. Tommy Lee Jones always plays Tommy Lee Jones.
yeah. And for some actors and actresses, that's their strong suit. Maybe
Yeah.
they're a one-trick pony, but if you do it really, really well, it doesn't matter. Keep doing it. If people are enjoying what you do enough to queue up to see it, keep doing it because you're making people happy.
So we should talk about that you are trans. You come from North Dakota, and you told me you came from the middle. I remember talking because I mean I've never been to that region in the United States, but I do know. Obviously, I know the film.
You're blessed. You're blessed. I escaped from that region of the U.S. That's pretty much the way I take it.
Well, I remember seeing the film Fargo, and you said, "Oh, that portrays the place as being nice."
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's fairly accurate. North Dakota is basically the rest of the United States about 60 years in the past. You know, if you told them Led Zeppelin broke up, you'd probably shock half the state. So they're a bit backwards. They haven't figured a lot out. My mom still lives there. It is one of the worst 3 states for LGBTQ, you know, whatever the other letters you want to throw in there. It keeps getting longer every year. Rights in the United States. I don't travel to North Dakota for anything. I fly my mom here if she wants to visit because there's nothing for me back there but probably harassment. And basically, you know, I'm just basically going to tell them, you know, fuck yourself, and, you know, we'll just go with that. So I don't need anything that state has, and, you know, if that state doesn't need me, that's fine. I don't give a shit.
Well, we've got to obviously obligatory talk about how you came out. The one thing I will say before we do that is, I remember on your old Facebook profile, the one Facebook, because you got booted, didn't you, for supposedly...
No, I didn't get booted. They decided I was a public figure, and they converted my profile to a fan page. But you can't communicate the same way. You can't do messages. You can't do it doesn't interact in the same way. And so that page still exists. And every now and then I post stuff on it, and it does okay.
Well, no, because I remember
personal level of interaction.
I remember flicking through some of your photos one time, and I came across there was this guy, really shy, long-haired guy with a beard. And when I hovered over it said Tempest, and I went, no. I couldn't believe that was you. I couldn't, considering, you know, how colourful you are now. It was a serious shock.
Well, I mean, if you look back at that old photo, I look a bit like a skinny Lemmy or Scott Weinrich from the band The Obsessed.
I hate to say this, you look like you played Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, I do play Dungeons and Dragons. I played 2 weekends ago. What the hell are you talking about? Of course I play Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, you'll get on well with my friend Ozma.
I've been playing... I'm sorry. No, it's not COVID. It's just a cough. I'm all right. I've had my shot. I'm good. I'm not going to die. At least not yet. I haven't found anything that's going to kill me. Anyhow, I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons since I was probably, I remember, it was probably about since 1984, maybe 1983.
Sorry, I should stereotype people, but it just gave me that impression that you look like you thought myself just looked like a nerd, and I thought I just couldn't believe it was you. I'm
just your regular transsexual rock star, porn star, actress who plays Dungeons and Dragons on the weekend. What the hell?
Yeah. But do you want to talk about?
Here's a great story though. I wanted to get back into playing recently because of COVID lockdown and things like that. And I hit up a friend of mine who I had been in a gaming group back in college when I first went to college back in North Dakota. And we had a gaming club and everything. And we'd meet once a week on campus, and, you know, they gave us some rooms and stuff to game in and things like that. I was elected to be the minister of paper propaganda, which means I was responsible for photocopying off the sheets of everything people needed. But I hit up my friend, And it's like, hey, I'm Tempest, but you would know me as, and I don't say the name anymore, as most people would, you know, figure out. It's like, that was then, this is now, so I don't bother with that name. And I said, you know, you went to Grand Forks and you were at this college and you were in Diversion's gaming group, and you know, you would have known me as you know, my former name. And you know, I said, I don't know if you're still gaming or anything like that, but I'd love to reconnect and things like that. And basically, I don't know if you use the term in the UK, or maybe you've heard the term hold my beer.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it was a hold my beer moment, because when my friend came back and said, oh, let me point you to my other profile. My name's Elizabeth now. I'm like, what the hell? He goes, oh, yeah, I knew all about your transition. I've been following you for months.
Yeah. So
and it's like, what, was there something in the water in our gaming group or something? Because like 3 or 4 of us transitioned. So, and it's beautiful. And I get together with her and her wife every couple Sundays to game. And I'm going to tell her that she's in this interview now because of this. But yeah, she's been a lifelong friend. And when I reconnected and things like that, I was going through some severe PTSD because of the abusive relationship I had been in, and the loss of my fiance and things like that. And Elizabeth says, yeah, come over, game, you know, and really, really reconnected with me. I'm almost tearing up here, as a friend. And it's like, I'm here, I'll help you. And that's something I don't get very often, to be honest with you. And part of that is because I have such a strong presence. When everybody thinks you're the strong one, nobody expects you to break. Yeah. So when you do, there's nobody there to catch you when you fall. You just keep on going straight on through. And that was kind of what was happening to me. Is I was trying to deal with stuff, but nobody wanted to believe that Tempest could be crumbling or having problems or having it. Hey, she's twisted steel and sex appeal, and she'll charge through a barbed wire fence and still come out okay. But that's not necessarily true, because I got hurt really, really bad, and in ways I never knew I could be hurt. And even though they would look at me and see the same Tempest that they knew, I had forgotten who I was. I forgot how to be who I was. It broke me on the inside. Well, it didn't break me on the inside. It almost did, because I let somebody else's thoughts become my food. Basically, I let the person who was abusing me in my relationship, I let the way she thought of me and treated me become my expectations of how to be treated. I become scared. I wouldn't leave my house. I wouldn't pick up my phone. You know that. He tried to call me. I was like, I'm not answering my phone. And you're
I
like,
remember one time I did try and ring you, and you messaged me, and you said you'd throw the phone. Yeah, I know you were going through some pretty bad shit at that time.
But the worst part of it was I let my abuser get inside my own head, and I let the way they viewed me as weak and as fragile and as something to be kicked around. It happened gradually, just a little bit. Abuse doesn't just start overnight. It happens gradually. And it builds up, and you start accepting things that you would never accept in your life. And particularly with me, nobody ever would lay a hand on me. Basically, if anybody did that, I'd probably hospitalize them myself. I mean, I don't tolerate that. But I allowed myself to be spit on, hit, slapped, kicked, strangled, stabbed, almost had my neck broken on a couple occasions, had an axe swung at my head. And you would think, swinging an axe at your head, that's pretty much a relationship ender for most things, right?
Yeah.
No, not by the time it got to that level, because little by little, it ramps up and you get more and more used to being treated poorly. And you start to accept it. And not only do you start to accept it, you start to expect it from the world around you, because you get cut off from all your regular friends and things like that. And you start to accept this treatment, how anything you do is going to be wrong. you can't make a right decision, because if you make a right decision, no matter how well thought out it is, no matter how much time and effort you put into it, the person that's abusing you is going to tell you were wrong. It doesn't matter if it's the most obvious right answer in the world, you're still going to be wrong. And you start getting used to that, and it breaks you inside to where you expect a negative reaction from the world around you to anything you do. You expect to be hurt emotionally, physically, or mentally. And that is what happened to me. And it took me a long time to start realizing that's not me. I look back a few months ago at the scared woman I was, and I go, who was that? I don't understand how that, became me. I do on an intellectual level, but the same token, I look at that person and I go, that's not Tempest. That's I don't know who that is. But when I was that person, when that got in my head, I couldn't remember how to be this person.
You've always given me the impression of being a strong woman, and you've come through this, which is great, and you're beautiful as ever. Yeah.
It's good lighting. That's all it is. It's a fiction of video.
Well, I was gonna say, you and Aria, my friend Aria, you are sort of when it comes to trans day visibility, I kind of think you two are sort of like the standout trans women I think of, who I know. I mean, Aria, basically, she's basically stolen Ziggy Stardust's hairstyle, and has her own swagger. And you just look like
whatever I look like.
Well, you look like a complete rock bitch, but in the nicest of ways, you know?
I take that as a compliment.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how you came out, because obviously, you know, North Dakota being as barren and desolate as you say it is.
That's a wasteland. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I mean, you now live in Minneapolis, obviously, which is
even living in Minneapolis. Like I said, when stuff starts to get into your head, I've got rings on, so I have got a glass desk and I clank on it. So forgive me on that. But even after I moved out of North Dakota, I had been conditioned to believe that transition wasn't something possible, that was, it just didn't happen. That wasn't real. You know, that people can't do that, or if they do that, their life must be absolute misery or whatever. That's what I thought. I was wrong, but that's what I thought. I knew this was me and this was living inside me. I wore my masculinity like a suit of armor. You know, leather jacket all the time, bullet belt, scowl on my face, goatee, handlebar mustache, dark glasses. You know, I literally wore my masculinity as a suit of armor because I was terrified that somebody would start to think that I was feminine on the inside. And so I wouldn't show any of that. No way.
Yeah, I've been there.
Then came an opportunity to audition for a band called All the Pretty Horses. I was a huge fan of them. I love their music. And part of me said, this is your ticket. This is your way out.
We should explain. Venus de Mars is kind of known in the trans community.
She's well known, absolutely.
Yeah. And, you know, All the Pretty Horses, of course, is her band.
Yeah.
And you can go and check out their stuff on YouTube. And I guess that was, you know, what you know, you have said to me in the past she was kind of your trans mum.
Well, she was my trans mother in some ways, because she and Jen Dean kind of showed me what was possible. And it
also should I explain to people, Jen Dean, I forgot what her surname is.
Jen Dean Forberg. Yeah. And she's to be my drummer for about 12 years. We were together. And then I made a horrible mistake and split up with her, and you know, the rest is kind of what damaged me. But anyway, they showed me what was possible because they were out there living their life on their terms. And you know, the moment I saw that, I mean, I stopped by the studio. I was still a boy when I stopped by the studio to pick up the CD to audition, and I got it from Venus, and I went, there she is. This is just how she lives. so is this just how she lived? And I'm like, wow, this might be my chance for that to be my life, for me to be able to come out and be who I am. And she asked me to learn 3 of the songs on the CD that she gave me. And like 5 days later, I had to audition, and I came in, and she goes, so, you know, we've had some other people audition. It hasn't been going really well. You know, most of the time, person learned 1, maybe 2 songs off the list. And I had the list, and I had the CD with me. And I said, because I had played in bands for a good, you know, 10, 12, 15 years by that point. I know a set list when I see one. And I said, is this your current set list? And she goes, well, yeah, that's what we're playing live. I said, okay, I learned it. And she goes, what? I said, I learned it. Well, there's like 9, 10 songs on that list. I said, well, yeah, there's 9 of the songs I learned. The 2 I didn't learn aren't on the CD you gave me, so I couldn't. And she's like, you learned all of them? Like, yeah, this was my chance. I practiced the hell out of that for 5 days, every song, you know, just drilled it into my head, listened to them nonstop every chance I got, until like 2 o'clock in the morning. Every night I was playing the songs, drilling them into my head, because this was my opportunity. Venus was dubious, to say the least, because nobody had ever walked in and done that. Nobody but one person, Jen Dean. Phenomenal drummer, jazz drummer, metal drummer, all around, probably one of the greatest drummers in the nation, certainly one of the greatest drummers in Minnesota. Jen Dean had done that.
And I would also say the thing I love about Jen Dean is, if you watch the film Fargo, you know, the characters have all got that sort of Scandinavian, because obviously Scandinavia, a lot of people from Scandinavia settled in that region. Jen Dean has that accent.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Jen Dean, but yes. But Venus goes, well, can you play this song? Bam, I played that song. Well, how about this one? Do you know that song? Well, of course, I told you I knew every song on this list, except for the 2 you didn't give me. And so we played that song. 6 songs later, Venus is sitting there shaking her head in disbelief, because I knew the entire set list. And I really did. And she goes, okay, well, we're going to talk about things, and we'd like to have you come in for a guest appearance on one of the shows and that type of thing. And I didn't know it at the time, but I left, and I'm like, okay, I got a guest appearance and everything. And we did the guest appearance. I think they had me do 3, 4 songs. I was wearing a vinyl mini skirt. It was my first time in public as a trans woman. Venus was really concerned. Venus didn't want me to come out, because I had never even been in public before as a female, never outside my own home. And she's like, you know, there's going to be a lot of people there. Sure enough, there's a lot of people there. 800 people in First Avenue, one of the largest clubs in Minneapolis. I chose that to come out as Tempest on stage in front of 800 people, me who had never been in public before. My vinyl miniskirt was riding up my hips and things like that. And by the second song, I just reached down, grabbed it, I ripped it off, threw it in the audience, ran up to Jen Dean with the guitar. I'm like, ah! And Jen Dean's like, whoa, what's going on? But the crowd loved it. I did well. And after the gig, Jen Dean went up to Venus, I guess. I didn't know this until later, and said, either you hire Tempest or I'm quitting the band. so I got the part. And a little while later, I think it was like 30 days later, we had to go to New Zealand and do a tour overseas. And you can't pack 2 identities in one suitcase. There just isn't enough for that length of time that we're going to be gone. And so a month later, I'm overseas living full-time as Tempest.
Oh, wow.
And I came back to the US, and I had to go back to my day job, which I hadn't transitioned for yet because it'd only been like a month. And I was in tears putting on my male clothes. And at that point in time, I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. It's Tempest or nothing. I have to transition or nothing. And so like in another month or so, I was living full-time as a female. Jen Dean described it as being shot out the tranny cannon because nobody transitions that fast, but I did. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody. I transitioned really, really quick, but I lived outside the box of the normal world anyway. And so people that didn't accept things like that, those people had already been cleared out of my life. Because I was a long-haired male rocker who lived by my own rules as a male. And so the people that I surrounded myself with accepted me for living by my own rules. So I had nobody leave my life. Everybody accepted me. When I reformed Harsh Reality, I approached my old singer and I said, "Oh, you know, I've been playing with Botha pretty hard." Yeah, I kind of saw that. You know, I'm like, okay, well, you know that the stage persona Tempest, that's me. That's me all the time. You know, that there is no time I am not Tempest, because he hadn't been around me and didn't know for sure or anything like that. And sure, there's drag queens and things like that. You can have a stage persona and be something else off stage.
Yeah.
I don't work that way. You
Yeah,
get Tempest 24/7. If you don't like it, don't hang around me, because you only get more of this. That's all I got for you. So, but he asked me one of the most beautiful questions I've ever been asked. And he goes, "I got one question for you. You happy?" I said, "I'm happier than I've ever been." And it's
the one thing I was going to ask you about.
What he said back to me was,
"Oh, sorry.
That's all I need to know." And I'm like, yes. So, and, you know, we reformed Harsh Reality, we went back out on the road, and you know, we did hundreds of shows with Harsh Reality. I mean, one of the top years, we did 199 shows that year, one less than Motorhead, which I was personally proud of. I'm like, oh my God, I kept up. So
I was gonna, sorry, I didn't mean to butt in, but I was gonna say, I did hear an interview of you and Jen Dean and one other member from Harsh Reality. And I remember the guy did ask you about being trans, but he sort of put it, he went, "Oh, I hear you're into gender bending." And I was going to ask you, I mean, Rob Flynn from Machine Heads called out racism within the metal community. Obviously, there is misogyny, we know that. There must be, I would imagine there's a fair bit of homophobia as well. How
well,
have you
Rob Halford took care of that years ago.
Well,
you know,
yeah,
there's some people that go, "Hey, that's not my thing." But the metal community is defined by honesty and being true to yourself. And, you know, the metal community itself revolves around the love of a music style that is ostracized and outcast by most of society. You don't get it on the radio very often. You know, metalheads and things like that are always looked down upon. You can if you ever get a chance, read Dee Snider's book, Shut Up and Give Me the Mic, about how everybody looked down upon him for being a metalhead in high school and things like that. But he carried on true to himself. And it's you know, a love of music and things like that you know, isn't easily acceptable by most of mainstream society. Now, granted, metal music has come a long way since, you know, the 80s and 90s, when it's like you were really looked down upon, and now it's more accepted because it's been around so long. But the community is founded on acceptance, and so I've never had a problem with that.
I just remember the metal kids at school were somewhat they were arseholes. I'm just sorry, I'm going to say it, you know. And the day I heard, you know, Nirvana's Nevermind, I thought, here's the antidote. Well, believe it or not, can you believe it's 30 years since Nirvana released Nevermind?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
But it was just I hated hair metal.
Some people did, and you know, I loved hair metal. I loved, you know, hardcore metal. I loved speed metal, thrash metal, black metal, straight up rock and roll, southern metal, you name it. I just love good rock and roll. I love good music. It doesn't matter what style it is. If it's done well, I like it. And that means done with conviction and honesty.
I always remember what Fat Mike said about the 80s. He said, you know, there was a lot of aggressive music, but they were all talking about witches and dragons and shit. You know, he said, you know, and the one big difference between punk and metal was that it wasn't always true, but punk tended to talk about social issues and stuff which was going on, whereas, as I said, metal, it was wizards and dragons and shit, sci-fi shit. And
you know, Fat Mike is Fat Mike, and he's entitled to his opinion, but it ain't always right. Neither is mine.
What I remember,
you've got artists like Dio and some of the other artists that did sing about dragons and fantasies and things like that. That's all well and good, but it wasn't all just that.
Well, I like Led Zeppelin, and Robert Plant's lyrics tended, not always, but tended to come from stuff from Lord of the Rings. He was into all that sort of stuff. But I was going to ask you, because I know you've met Fat Mike.
I met Fat Mike without knowing I met Fat Mike.
The lead singer of No Effects, and the guy who
it was at one of the trans award shows. I was sitting with him, and I can't remember his girlfriend / mistress's name. I was sitting with her, and she was just, chattering with me, and it was loud as hell in there, and I couldn't hear anything. And he mentioned he was a bass player, and I'm like, oh, cool. If you ever looking for gigs in Minnesota, you can open up for me. So I'm actually offering him a chance to open for me, and he's like, what? What is this chick talking about? I'd never followed NoFX. I honestly hadn't. I had no idea who I was sitting there with. I'm sitting there with what some people would consider rock royalty. I don't even know it. And I'm asking him, it's like, oh yeah, if you come by, I'll hook you up. You can open for me. So I was gonna be doing him a favor because I was a nice girl. And he's looking at me like, what is this chick on? It's like, I'm not on anything. I just never listened to any of your albums. Sorry, man. I'm really sorry. I have no idea. I have listened to his stuff since. It's actually pretty good, but I just didn't know at the time.
I was going to say, he's also he runs Fat Rec.
His girlfriend, Soma Snake Oil. She's a mistress out of LA, I believe. I'm not sure where she's currently residing or anything, but lovely gal. Definitely knows how to work a paddle.
Yeah, he's really into BDSM. I forgot the name of his fucking record company now, but I do know he's the one who gave Laura Jane Grace a records contract.
Probably could have given me one too if I hadn't been an idiot. So
yeah, I mean, Laura Jane Grace. Obviously, you say you're into punk. People say, "Oh, you're trans." Oh, do you know Laura? Have you heard of Laura Jane Grace? I go, yeah, but I don't consider her punk.
Yeah, she's not exactly punk. Her and I have clashed a little bit. We tried to get on some gigs with them, and basically they said, no, you can't be on the gigs because basically you're so aggressive and out there with stuff, you'd make them look like nothing, which isn't a lie. I mean, it's kind of true because our music is so heavy and we are so visibly and musically present on stage that if you try to go on after us and claim that you're punk or anything like that, you're going to look like Lawrence Welk. It would have been funny. I would have loved to have done it, but quite honestly, we didn't get on the show because it wasn't the right mix. It would have been like having Slayer open up for Poison or something like that in the 80s. It just doesn't work. Laura Jane, she seems nice enough and things like that. Sometimes I look at her and how she's trying to seem overly edgy, in my opinion. And my opinion is worth the 2 cents that I've got sitting here on the table in front of me, and that's all the money I got right now. So it seems to be a put on and a little bit more pretentious of her to, oh yeah, I'm so ostracized by this and I'm struggling so much with it. And, I remember I got into an argument with her on Twitter. Twitter's a great place to be in arguments with any other musician or anything like that. And it's actually, you get a lot of press out of it in the end, or at least a lot of fans comment one way or the other. They love you or they hate you. Either way, you're gaining traction one way or the other. But she had, they were playing a Democratic, some convention early on in the election when Bernie Sanders was still in the running. and she's like, can you feel the excitement in the air? I can't believe that we're playing the Democratic convention, you know, whatever it is, with Bernie Sanders. Can you feel the excitement in the air? And she takes a picture of this empty stage in an alleyway. And I'm going, what the fuck excitement is this? Maybe if you were on stage or if somebody else was there, it looks like they just like built the thing and left. There's not another person in the picture or anything. And I gave her crap about it. And she goes, you can go ahead and unfollow me on Twitter. I promise not to care. And I said, I'll do that as soon as I get around to giving a shit about what you say. So, you know, and her fans jumped on me and my fans kind of jumped on her. So it's okay. You know, she had more fans. So I came out of it the worse for wear, but nevertheless, like me or don't like me, they knew I existed, which is still press in my opinion.
Well, I think you're far more of a rock star than she is. I do.
Well, I mean, but that's
because you've got the swagger. You do have the rock and roll swagger. Yeah. And
I got something. I don't know what it is. I just believe in living my life with the volume on 10, you know?
Yeah.
I don't try to blend
No, 11. It goes up to 11.
I'll get to
one
11.
louder.
I had some damage. I'm only going up to 10 for a little while. I'm old, okay? So,
but do you know there are people?
If I go to 11, my fillings start to come out these days. I got to kind of keep it 10, 10.5, something like that.
But we're both showing our age because there are people who won't get that joke now. Yeah. I have met people who are.
That is a timeless movie. People will get that. There's actually a brand, I can't remember if it's effects pedals or amplifiers that just came out a little while ago, and the company's name is 11. so it is ingrained culture from like here to eternity, and that's what happens with a classic.
Well, I'll tell you, anytime anyone mentions Stonehenge, I start laughing. So just you know, we're basically, for people who don't know, we're referring to This Is Spinal Tap.
Yep, This Is Spinal Tap, and that was actually inspired by a true story about a set design that went completely wrong that Black Sabbath had, I believe, after Ozzy left. I can't remember if it was Ian Gillan that was singing with them at that time or whatever, but they had a set design and they were supposed to be doing some kind of monumental, you know, ruins or something like that. And they built it too small. So they were like almost towering over the ruins, but it's based on a true story.
The set story I remember is Richie Blackmore when he was in Rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they used to have an inflatable rainbow at the back of the stage, right? It wasn't inflated enough for his liking, so he refused to go on stage.
Well, Richie Blackmore has a reputation of being an ass for how he performed. I believe it was, I think it was California Jam back in, I think, 71 or so, and Deep Purple was supposed to go on. And they had it in their contract that they don't go on until after the sun goes down. That way they get the lights. And any musician and performer on stage knows that the lights help make the show. If you go on in daylight, you can rock your ass off, but it doesn't have the same effect as having those lights raining down on you and the fog machines and everything going. You try to run a fog machine, you know, during the day, it looks like there's a barn on fire a block over. It doesn't work. But, you know, you go on at night and it gives a different look and a different feel, and it elevates the visual aspect of that performance, that level.
Yeah.
Anyway, the show was running early, which rarely happens, but it does happen. And they said, well, you know, Richie, you got to go on, you know, an hour or 2 hours early. Richie went into his dressing room, shut off the lights, locked the door, and refused to come out. And so basically the California Jam, which is a massive, massive festival, had to scramble and kind of figure out how to fill time because, you know, Deep Purple was not going on stage until the lights came down. And, you know, people, well, yeah, Richie Blackmore was an asshole for doing that. Maybe he was a man protecting the brand and the band that he had invested so much in and that had been promised to be represented in a certain way, and he was holding them to that promise. That's not being an asshole in my book. that is making somebody live up to their word to you. And they had a contract, and so there's nothing they can do about it. And when he said no, they should have immediately gone to plan B. And I don't think he was an asshole for that. And he's had some other issues with things like that, where he demanded a certain level of performance out of his players, out of the venues they played at, out of a PA system, things like that. But you don't get to be the legend that Richie Blackmore is. You don't get to be the legend that Deep Purple is and things like that, unless you make sure that you deliver the best quality product every single show, every single time. And I know the pain of that. I've had events where the venue or whatever doesn't want to live up to what they're doing, and I have to literally break balls to get them to actually do what they say they were going to do. Sometimes I have to like yell at my own band members. We're known for putting on a very extravagant stage show, theatrical and things like that.
Yeah.
And we bring a lot of amps. We bring a massive drum kit because Jendine is a very talented player. And I've had my singers and my guitar players and even my roadies and stuff. We have to bring all that. It's a small gig. It seems like we're being assholes to the club and stuff like that by making them, take so long for loading in and loading out and things like that. I said, I don't care if there's one person in the audience. You don't see Kiss going on, slacking off, not delivering the show. When you go to see their show or an Alice Cooper show, you have an expectation of what kind of show you're going to see. The moment that performer stops delivering that on a consistent basis, and by consistent, I mean every goddamn time, then the crowd's like, oh, yeah, remember they used to, and I saw them last week, and, they don't do that anymore. Oh, I'm not going. You have to deliver it every time.
Yeah,
so you have to give everything you have every single time, and it doesn't matter if it's pouring rain or there's a blizzard going on. I remember schlepping gear up 2 flights of stairs for a tattoo convention in a blizzard in Chicago through a foot of snow and playing to 13 people. One of the 13 people worked for a music magazine writing about the tattoo convention. And they gave us a hell of a write-up, because even through that blizzard, even though there were only 13 people there, and I think 5 of them were the other band that was playing before us, we put on the full goddamn show. And the hell if I'm not going to do that every time.
The other thing I know about Richie Blackmore, and he fell out with Dio when Dio was the lead singer of Rainbow, because Dio wasn't writing enough love songs. He didn't want to do he was sort of wanted to distance himself from the whole wizard and orc stuff. He wanted to do sort of more mainstream, I guess, AOR type stuff with Rainbow. I do remember hearing that story. Well, I was going to say, when I was sort of, before we ever spoke, I remember hearing an interview you and Jendine gave to a trans podcaster, and you were going on tour, I think, in the Southwest, and I remember you made a reference in that interview, and this is why I really wanted to talk to you at that time, was because you made a reference to Doctor Who, and I was just like, what? She comes from Minneapolis. What the fuck does she know about Doctor Who? Turned out you're a mega Doctor Who fan.
Yeah, we both, Jendine and I, were watching Doctor Who. Had just kind of made more of a mainstream comeback. I remember watching Doctor Who when I was just a little kid, and it was like chasing a goddamn unicorn, because it would only be on, like, I think PBS carried it reruns in the States.
Yeah.
But they didn't put it on at a consistent time. And this is the same thing I'm talking about with your fan base. And one time it'd be on at like 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. The next week it might be on at 4 o'clock on a Saturday, or 3 in the morning on a Friday or something. Yeah. And you'd be like, where's the next episode? You can't find it. You'd be like going through, they don't even print TV guides and newspapers anymore because you can get everything on demand. But you had to chase down that show to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the days when, for some of the sort of like, I actually remember having to go to, up to the big H&V in London to buy an Iggy and the Stooges album. And it cost me £25 because it was an import.
Yeah. There's the same thing with me and Motorhead. to get Motorhead albums, I was living in Devil's Lake, North Dakota. Devil's Lake was a weird little town. Our high school mascot was Satan. Believe it or not, it actually was. People are like, your high school mascot was Satan? Yeah, Devil's Lake Satans. We had little blonde cheerleaders going, go Satan, go! You know, and it was just kind of weird. And I tell people that, like, no, you're making up. I'm like, no, go look, it was. But you couldn't get most metal albums in Devil's Lake. You had to drive 90 miles to a record store in Grand Forks just to buy a Motorhead album. And so it was like a pilgrimage. You know, it's like, okay, you know, you get your, you know, every dollar you have and everything, and you know, you get 4 friends, you pile in the car, we're gonna go to the record store, and you drive all that way, and you're just anticipating. You'd walk in the record store, and it was like the land of Oz, because you'd walk in and this wafting smell of incense and the marijuana they were smoking in the back room would just kind of waft forward. There would be artwork and tapestries hanging and weird little crystal crap hanging all over the place. And it'd be like no place on earth you had ever seen. It was like the most magical place on the planet to my childhood. Going to the record store in Grand Forks. And Grand Forks was just a tiny Air Force town in North Dakota, probably about 100,000 people, maybe not even that back then. But it was like the biggest city within driving distance of where I lived. But it was like a pilgrimage, and, you know, and it's like, you know, everybody's like, okay, we're gonna go to Grand Forks, we're gonna go to the record store. Well, you know, what rock and roll T-shirt are you gonna wear? You got the leather jacket? Yeah, you don't wear the leather jacket, you ain't getting in the car. You know, so and that was it was just a magical time. And you know, there's still a few of those old head shop style record stores around. There's a couple of them here in Minneapolis. No Name Records. It's one of my favorite places to go. And then there is it Rhino Records or Relapse Records? I can't remember, in downtown Minneapolis. Most of them have closed.
Well, yeah, I was about to say, kids don't know they're born today. With it's so easy to get hold of, you know, good music out there. Whereas we used to have to make a huge effort to get the stuff we really liked, you know. And you know, I still remember that. But back to Doctor Who, you obviously remember the Tom Baker era, because I have talked.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you remember the character Leela?
I probably do. You have me on a different train of thought, so I can't think of that right now. But
she was a sort of intelligent savage. That was the whole concept with her. That character. She was actually the person who came up with the character lead. Actually named them after a Palestinian terrorist, funny enough. But Leela was played by an actress called Louise Jameson, right? And basically, I found out I was trans when I was like 4, due to her and Linda Carter's Wonder Woman. You know, I remember twirling around hoping I turned into a woman, but you know, didn't happen.
You know, I had cut up tin cans and I put them around my wrist to make, you know, the bulletproof bracelets.
But I was just going to tell you. So a few years ago, right, I went to a Unite Against Fascism conference, right? And I had a whole load of speakers there, and I didn't notice who the next speaker was, and they said, "Oh, it's Louise Jameson. You know, you'll know her from shows like Doctor Who and Bergerac and stuff." And I actually got to speak to her afterwards, and I said to her, she was a little taken back, but I said, "You helped me, you know, realize I was a woman." And she basically said, "Oh, I'm glad that I inspired you," you know. So to get to meet somebody who made me realize, you know, I was trans, you know. I mean, I also obviously I've encountered Caroline Cozzi, very famous trans woman who was a model back in the 80s, and it's, you know, basically because I was told I kept being told, oh, it's not possible to change your gender, right? I was always told when I was a kid, it's not possible to change your gender, and then I saw Caroline Cozzi on the news at 10. And it was proof positive, yes, I could be the woman I knew I was, right? And in some ways, unfortunately, Caroline's a bit of a true scum big, as I found out. But, you know, the fact that, you know, I get to meet all the people who inspired me, you know, it's weird, but you do, you know, eventually. Now, a couple of things before we go. I have to ask you, what is it with trans women and bass guitars? because I know you play bass guitar. My friend Katie Hutchinson, who's also been a professional musician, and funny enough, also before she transitioned, had the handled by mustache and you know what we call mutton chops here. She was big into Motorhead as well. And my fiance, she's also a bass player, and she's trans, and it's like, what is it with trans women and bass guitars?
Well, I can answer that one. That's easy. There's too many goddamn guitar players out there. We want to be useful. That's why I picked it up. I went, well, it's like everybody's got a guitar, so I'm going to play something else. And plus, Lemmy was my hero and things like that. You know, you might be seeing a bit of this too. I know I am. I know Jendine sees it. I definitely know Venus sees it. Us in the tranny rocker community, or whatever you want to call it, it used to be we were a pretty rare breed, and we kind of all knew each other. I just had a Facebook conversation with Jackie Anks, the drummer for Rhino Bucket, and you know, she writes me back and things like that, and I said, oh yeah, the motorcycles you're building and stuff like that, those look like a lot of fun and everything. I was like, she's got a Grammy. You know, she's a Grammy award-winning musician, and not only does she bother to write back to me, but she knows what I do, that I build motorized bicycles and motorcycles in my spare time and things like that. And I'm like, wow, how cool is that? It's like, well, it's kind of a small club. But these days, it's because of Venus, because of Jackie, Jendine. You know, I haven't had as much time, but it's been 17 years since I transitioned, maybe 18 now, I can't remember. Because we have been trotting that road and stomping down that trail, it's become easier for those that follow. And you know, it used to be real rare. You know, if you would encounter another trans individual, particularly right after I came out, it was very rare. You know, you might run into one other person, you might know maybe one in this town, you know, maybe there's another one, you know, halfway across the world or something. Oh yeah, Jane County, or Genesis, you know, in New York and things like that. But we were pretty rare. And these days, you can't swing a cat by the tail in a room without hitting like 4 or 5 other trans women. We're all over and trans men. And trans men, they're amazing. I don't know if it's Minnesota or what it is, because they just grow beards like continually, and they're all manly, and you never know. And you know, it just seems like it's become more and more prevalent and more accepted. You know, I get women and even men or whatever just complimenting me on the tattoos and, you know, my little weird things like that. And, you know, sometimes, you know, I'll meet somebody and like, oh yeah, I'm trans and things like that. Oh, you are? Okay. And they're just like, yeah, so what? You know, what else is new? So they don't care. And that is one of the most beautiful things I've witnessed along this journey, is people not caring. They don't care that I'm trans. They don't care the other person's. For many young trans women, and there's one that I'm actually kind of speaking about right now, and she's, you know, she might be becoming my girl. I don't know. I've kind of got a thing for her. Anyway. Being trans looms large in our world because it's such a big part and such a struggle for us to come out and be who we are and things like that. And one of the things that she's dealing with is anytime that she feels slighted or, you know, not treated fairly, she makes the assumption it's because, well, it's because I'm trans. I'm like, no, it's because they're a dick. Okay, yeah. People are dicks all over, man. And that's a generic term. You know, by the way, I don't say that to you as anything. That's just a generic term. So don't ever take me as gendering anything.
Well, it's funny. I've had this conversation with Christy Abbey, who's also another trans musician. Funny enough, she does know of you. Funny enough, and you say dick in America, whereas in this country we say cunt a lot more.
Oh yeah.
There's that difference, you know. before we go, I have to ask you before it'd be amiss of me to ask you about the state of trans rights in the United States at the moment, and particularly the shit which is happening in South Dakota, because there really does seem to be a really reactionary governor there.
They have a dick in office, basically.
Christy Nome, I think her name is. No, South Dakota. It's Christy Nome.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. She's an idiot and she's a dick.
Well, she's a
cunt, whichever you like to say.
It seems to me that she's probably seen the attention Marjorie Taylor Greene has got and Lauren Boebert, and probably thinks, oh, she should throw her hat in the ring in being a really reactionary Republican and try and make a play to run in 2024 for
Michelle Bachmann, anybody? Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course, Michelle. Yes, you come from the state of Michelle Bachmann. Yeah.
Taking things and sensationalizing them to electrify your base, which, you know, Henry, you spoke of Henry Rollins, and one thing that Republicans love in the United States is the controversy over gay marriage. Republicans love gay marriage. Do you know why Republicans love gay marriage?
No, do tell me.
Because it fills the donation box for them. Because they
yeah, but it seems
their right-wing base. Because against
I was going
people to donate.
I was going to interject there because, you know, I do a lot of political commentary. It seems to me that that's maybe have moved on to bashing trans people, because you're seeing a whole slew.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole trans women in sports thing, that's all bullshit.
Yeah. There's very few trans people who compete in sports.
Exactly. It's like, what the hell are you worried about? Like the six trans women in your state that might compete?
The trouble is, it's encouraging. But the trouble is, with stuff like that, it's othering and victimizing trans people, which encourages people to put a stigma on trans people. That's the problem, right? It sends out a certain message about the attitude that should be adopted towards trans people in various states, you know, like Mississippi, Arkansas. Now, okay, some people might think, who gives a shit about, you know, states, you know, like, you know, Arkansas and Mississippi. Well, I was going to say my friend Aria comes from Mississippi and she's trans. And there's a reason she doesn't live in Mississippi, you know, because that's probably the most transphobic state in the union. The one thing I was going to say to you is, before the last presidential election, I went through the list of Trump's basically rollback of LGBTQ rights. And I was seriously worried. Being a Jew, I'm very read up on how the way the Nazis incrementally, when they came to power, basically, with using the law, wrote Jews out of German society, right? I was seriously worried that if Trump had been re-elected, you and every other LGBTQ person would have been ordered to wear a pink triangle in public. Seriously, it was going that way. So you've had a lucky escape with Biden. You know, Biden's not perfect. We know that, but he has at least. I will say this, you know, bombing Syria, yeah, okay, thumbs down for that. But everything he has done, you know, when it comes to LGBTQ rights, thumbs up. Unfortunately, I don't think he will get the equality bill through the Senate. There's just not.
You know, each period of repression and conservative movements in the U.S. and by and large the world has been followed by equal, if not greater, period of progressive movements towards human rights, not just trans rights, but trans rights are human rights, and progressing more towards an accepting society. So every time there's a Donald Trump, there comes along a Joe Biden or a Barack Obama or, you know, Jack Kennedy to push things further the other way.
You know who my favorite US president is of my lifetime?
No, I don't.
Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy is unbelievable.
Yeah.
He's fantastic, and a lot of people don't give him the credit that he deserves.
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter is actually incredible, and he's an incredibly giving individual even today.
Yeah.
You see him, he falls off a ladder or something like that, trying to help somebody build a house. And the guy isn't exactly young. He was there when they were like still painting the pyramids, and so.
Well, no, he was the first year. I mean, some people say Nixon was the first U.S. president to really talk about the environment, but no, it was Carter who put solar panels on top of the White House, and addressed America about the environment being in crisis. He was also the first U.S. president to ever meet an LGBTQ delegation at the White House, and he does support same-sex marriage, right? And he does support trans rights. I mean, I was going to say one of the differences between here and the US is that in the US, the left seems fairly united behind trans rights, whereas the left here is not, right? There are way too many TERFs involved with the left here, even though I kind of feel that you cannot call yourself a liberal or a socialist if you do not believe in equality, and that goes without exception. Okay, at the moment, the state of affairs, and I'll tell you how bad it is in this country, right? You've got Boris Johnson doesn't give a shit about LGBTQ rights, and you've got Keir Starmer, the new Labour leader. Well, he's been the Labour leader for the last year now. It's supposedly, the Labour obviously equivalent to the Democrats. Every opportunity he has had to speak up for trans rights, he hasn't. Yeah, he sat on the fucking fence, and now this past weekend he went and visited a church which espouses homophobic rhetoric for a photo op, and it's like, hold on, Labour are meant to be the party which speaks up for LGBTQ people, and you're now going to a homophobic fucking church. This is how bad it is now. It's.
I get it.
And the thing is, the reason I bring up Biden is I was hoping that Biden would encourage, because he seems to want to, globally, to push for LGBTQ rights. That's the hope.
He definitely is. I mean, he put the first trans cabinet member in there.
Yeah, Rachel Levine, and she's brilliant.
Exactly. And people have been giving us like, come on, just. It's unbelievable the amount of hatred that Biden is getting from the right wing right now, and these people are taking the $1,400 stimulus checks, and they're eating up all the other stuff. But they're Biden he tripped on. Biden put 100 million shots in arms for the COVID vaccine within the first 60 days. I don't care if the guy crawls up the stairs. Okay, that's doing something.
He's not the first US president to fall down the fucking stairs of Air Force One. Gerald Ford famously did it back in the 70s.
It's a stairway. People trip on stairs. So what?
Yeah, but it gives the whole conspiracy theory about how he has dementia, doesn't it? Yeah.
He has. Well, basically, what it is the man has a slight speech impairment.
Yeah, I know this. But
and people mock him for it, and they try to say, well, he's not thinking clearly, he's not doing this clearly, he's not doing that.
Well, that's ableist.
He is the quiet president that is getting things done. He's not blowing horns about it. He's not blowing smoke up anybody's ass. Not saying that just like because you blow smoke, but he's just like, okay, time to get to work. And I saw recently, Trump was infamous for the amount of golf trips that he took.
Yeah, and Biden hasn't taken any.
Somewhere like $300 million were spent on golf trips under Trump. Of course, the Republican Party did, that's okay, he's Trump. Why is that okay? I don't understand why that can possibly be okay if you're talking about being fiscally conservative and this guy is just like hemorrhaging money on golf trips. Fuck that guy, all right? Fuck sweet potato Hitler, okay? That's all I got to say.
Yeah. All right, have you got anything to plug before we go?
Have I got anything to plug? There's the 10-year anniversary of the movie Open that I have a role in as Genesis that is going to be in the Provincetown Film Festival. I don't have anything musically to plug right now. I've got things in the works, but you know, as much as the UK has been, the US has been on lockdown. I haven't been rehearsing with the band because I've got a history of bronchitis, and you know, it's, you know, for over 20 years I've had it almost every winter, and I'm susceptible to lung infection, so I've had to be very, very careful. I have left the house, you know, maybe 3-4 times a month tops to go get, you know, groceries, which are kind of like laying in supplies. It's like a tactical strike on the grocery store, running in, and it's like, okay, 15 minutes in and out, okay, and coming out with a huge cart of food and like throwing it in a freezer. Well, but I don't have anything musically to plug right now, other than there will be a Harsh Reality reunion. And because I am Tempest, it will not be a Harsh Reality reunion show. It will be a Harsh Reality reunion tour. When that will be, earliest probably October 2021. More likely it may be into 2022. It depends on how everything goes health-wise for the nation.
Do you think you'll ever get over to this side of the pond?
I plan to. I haven't stopped yet.
It'd be great to see you. You know, and I can give you a hug in person for
yeah, and
for all you've done for me.
And maybe I'm jumping the gun. I've Venus and I parted on less than stellar circumstances. We've both had some growing up to do since then, and maturing both musically and personally. And we've been talking lately. And one thing I would like to do is, I don't know if she would be game for it or not. I have no idea. I've talked to Jen Dean about this as well, is doing a Pretty Horses reunion with what I consider the classic lineup of Jen Dean, myself, and Venus as a trans band, and seeing what we can do with that.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I'd love.
There's lots of people that would. I get asked for it all the time.
Yeah.
And we're all getting older, and sooner or later, there won't be 3 of us anymore. I don't know when that day is going to come. I hope I'm the first to go, because I don't want to see either of them go. I don't want to be here to see it, because that makes me very sad. Yeah. So I hope I'm the wild one that gets taken out first. I hope I end up being the Sid Vicious. Okay. So. Yeah. But I would really enjoy an opportunity to go back and revisit playing with all the Pretty Horses and Venus, whether it's one show or maybe doing, you know, a few shows here and there as a mini tour or special event type thing. And, you know, having one last hurrah with that musical act that was so special to me would be a great thing.
All right, well, I think we'll leave it there. Okay. Right, if you like this video, please give it a like. If you've got any feedback, please give a comment down below. Please do share this video on social media, because Tempest deserves all the attention. Seriously, she's a great person who I've got a lot to thank for. And most important of all, please subscribe to this channel. You don't know how much that will help me out. It really will help me out. Until the next time, please stay safe, take care of yourself, and peace out.